Secretary Block is a graduate of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point and served 3 years in active duty as an infantry officer. He has operated the family-owned Block Farms in Galesburg, Illinois, since 1960. In 1977, John Block was named Director of Agriculture for the state of Illinois. In that capacity, he led a 3-week people-to-people fact-finding mission to the Soviet Union, Poland, Hungary, Austria, and Switzerland. He conducted a market survey in Taiwan and was a member of the agriculture export team, which traveled to China and Japan in 1978 and 1979. He also supervised the Illinois Department of Agriculture's export offices in Brussels and in Hong Kong. Mr. Block was sworn in as U.S. Secretary of Agriculture in January of 1981. This morning, Mr. Block will speak on the topic, Clearing the Road for Tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, our United States Secretary of Agriculture, John R. Block. Mr. Block.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm very, very happy to be here in Kansas. I have been on a short whirlwind tour so far with Senator Dole, some other people, and we've had a very warm welcome every place that we have gone. It's like being back home. Kansas is not that much different from Knoxville, Illinois, where you get up in the morning and go down to the local restaurant and have coffee and eggs and bacon and go out and work on the farm for the day. And when you're there, you're going to hear about all the problems that we have in agriculture from all the neighbors. And you have to tell them a few of your problems too. But it's out where the real people are. And I'm happy to be here. And I appreciate it very much. It's also a great honor, and I'm very humbled to be in a position to deliver this lecture today, because I know and I've seen and I'm aware of the distinguished lectures that you've had in the past, and it's quite a crowd to come into. But agriculture is a great industry, and we need to have a lot of spokesmen for it, and we have a message to tell. It's fun to be here on this campus. It's a beautiful campus. I had a running tour this morning of K-State. I have to concede that the sun was just trying to come up. It was kind of dark when we started. But we ran the campus. And I was talking about running. Senator Dole is going to be hurrying back Sunday to be on Face the Nation. And while he's doing that, I'm going to be running the Marine Corps Marathon. And I think running a marathon is probably easier than facing the nation. But he'll probably get done ahead of me, I concede that. And seeing the students here today, as I've seen them in more than one setting today, reminds me that I have a student in Des Moines, Iowa at Drake University, a daughter, another daughter at Denison University in Ohio, a son that's recently graduated from Stetson University in Florida. None of my children went to Illinois, where I'm from. They didn't go to Kansas either, though. But it's good to be here. I was especially pleased, as I've said before, about receiving the invitation to the Alfred Landon series for two reasons. First, Governor Landon was and still is a strong advocate of agriculture, a firm believer in the free world trade of our farm products. And that's enough right there to make me feel at home at Kansas State. There's also something else that makes this a comfortable situation for me. I know enough about Governor Landon to realize that he was right on target with his theory of how federal government should be operated. I'm only sorry to say that it took more than 40 years for a lot of other people to realize the same thing. All we know is that the history books have said about Governor Landon. We read, of course, that he was one of Franklin Roosevelt's 4 electoral victims, but history also tells us he was a progressive and capable governor. He was a man who has reflected pride upon his state for over half a century of public life. Many things have happened in this country during the 45 years since Governor Landon left office. The federal government has changed quite a bit during those years. And I suspect that most of those changes were caused by those who lacked the governor's shrewd grasp of both the limitations and the potential of American government. They lacked his conviction that government must be competent as well as compassionate. It's that quality, among others, that we admire in his daughter, Nancy Landon Casaubon, your senator. And it's that quality, a quality of common sense, that has emerged again in government as we prepare to return this nation to a foundation constructed more than 200 years ago. We're going to do this. In fact, it's happening right now. I, for one, could say that it's one of the most exciting eras in the history of our government. I'm here today to speak with you about a subject that is equally as exciting to me, the subject of agriculture. Agriculture is an industry. It's a way of life. It's excited me since the early days on my parents' farm, since we planted corn with horses, and we checked corn then. We didn't drill it thick. We put up our hay loose. I went to a one-room country school and rode my pony there and back for 8 years. It's an industry that I stay close to. As I talked to my son on the phone yesterday, our beans are out, and we're halfway done with corn, and I was there last weekend and spent a half day on the combine. This government job I'm in allows me to go back and work, but I have to ask the employees what I'm supposed to do, because I'm not allowed to make management decisions. They take a great joy in giving me work to do. I think they're getting even with me. But it's a lot of fun. And my father's there and my son's there, and I'm the only generation not working on the farm. Today I'm excited about being Secretary of Agriculture during a time when my industry is in a position to contribute so much to the renewal of our national economy. I don't attempt to say that agriculture alone will provide all the necessary strength to get this nation back on course. Agriculture does not exist in a vacuum. It's not to be separated from other sectors of the economy. But I will say very firmly that without a strong and prosperous agriculture, this country will have little hope of recovery. In other words, agriculture is going to make the difference. I can say that because I happen to know that agriculture means to the economy of this country, this single industry accounts for a full 20% of our gross national product. Some 23 million people depend on agriculture, either directly or indirectly, for their livelihood. I also know that agriculture has shown nearly a $30 billion surplus in exports, while the rest of our exports have shown a $50 billion deficit. We can compete in agriculture. Figures like these are sending a strong message to me, and indeed to everyone in the land. They're telling me that agriculture is going to make the difference between success or failure of our nation's economic recovery. These figures present a challenge to me and to every other person involved in the industry. They're telling us we have some serious work ahead of us. The people of this land are counting on us. It should not be news to anyone that agriculture is facing some rather serious problems right now. The prices aren't good. I live and die on a daily basis the world of agriculture. It's my life, and it always has been. List a few of the horror stories that I found. I knew they were there when I went to Washington 9 months ago. Agriculture was suffering from low prices. We still are. An ill-advised grain embargo, although lifted, still plagues us. Double-digit interest rates, inflation, burdensome taxes, unfair estate tax, pages of regulations that have a direct impact on agriculture. These are problems that have been silently invading our lives over a period of many years. We have to admit it was our fault. We allowed government to grow bigger, to grow more powerful. It was a direction that government took mainly because we, the people, did not demand any other course. It's our government. The American people either bought the idea that federal government could actually spend our nation into prosperity. And we all know what happened. The only thing that we got out of it was a national debt that challenges our imagination, talking about $1 trillion. It's unbelievable, that figure. I don't know what it means. I can't envision what it means. It's a monster that must be stopped. We have to remember, however, it's taken decades to get ourselves into a situation like this. We should not be surprised if it takes more than just a few months to work our way out. The point is, the American people gave the big spending government the opportunity to succeed in years past. It failed. Now the American people have demanded a new course. We're going to follow that new course. It's amazing how quickly things have happened in Washington when the people of this country provide their support loudly and clearly. We should just look at what has happened already. We've seen a reduction in federal spending across the board. There's going to be more, and there must be more. We received relief on both individual tax rates and estate taxes. They're both important. There's some things that I'd been working for years, and I'm sure some of you had. And sometimes I thought it would never come to pass. It has. We've accelerated the depreciation schedule for farm equipment, created new investment opportunities. Hundreds of regulations, many of which affect agriculture, have been revised or eliminated. We've ended the Soviet grain embargo. We're opening up trade. We all realize the job is not done, not by a long shot. Interest rates are still too high. Fortunately, they've come down a little. The inflation rate has dropped from 14% to below 10%. We must push that even lower. Right now, the only figures that I want to see heading upward are farm prices, of course. And that's something that we're working on also. Even as I speak, we're in the midst of a battle over farm legislation. And I hope that next week the House and Senate will reach a compromise, and we'll have a farm bill that's market-oriented, producer-oriented, one that still provides income protection for farmers in Kansas and throughout the country. We feel this can be accomplished. We need to have a balanced bill. It's been a long, tough battle. I'm thankful for the support that we received from some of the people that were sent to Washington by the state of Kansas. I'm referring to Senator Dole, to Senator Nancy Kassenbaum, Representative Pat Roberts, others. Pat Roberts and Senator Dole, both on agricultural committees of the House and Senate respectively. We should realize, however, that when President Reagan talks about reducing spending, agriculture cannot be exempt. Personally, I don't think farmers expect agriculture to be exempted. Throughout the country, farmers have told me that they want profits, they want prosperity, but they don't want these to come at taxpayers' expense. They want them out of the marketplace. The truth is, there isn't enough money in this treasury to buy prosperity for agriculture or any other industry. It must come out of the marketplace. As a farmer myself, I'm firmly convinced the role of government in agriculture is to simply clear the road so that farmers can earn a living tomorrow through their own business decisions today. I'm convinced that farmers want opportunity and they'll take advantage of it when offered. So how does the government go about clearing the road for our nation's farmers? Well, one idea, one important area involves the expansion of our export markets. I want to tell you how we expect to achieve this. See, when you look at agriculture, the only way to strengthen price and to get more profit into the industry is to increase demand, or on the other side of the equation, reduce supply. Well, we're looking at maybe a reduced supply wheat set-aside if we ever get a farm bill completed so we can really announce it for sure. But the best side to work from is the side of increasing demand, because then we're selling and we're operating this great agricultural plant at full capacity. I want to tell you a little bit how we expect to achieve this export expansion. We should focus on the reasons why this is so important, of course, to the future of American agriculture. 10 years ago, exports provided only 15% of the U.S. farmers' market returns. This year, it's a full 25%. I remember back in 1969, I was speaking at a seminar at the University of Illinois, and I was talking about expanding exports. And I said at that time, if we can ever achieve the objective that President Nixon is talking about, of $10 billion worth of exports, this should be a big step in strengthening farm income. Well, we've moved there. We've moved well past that now. And a lot of things have changed over that period of time. Today, like I say, 25% of our market returns are from exports. For crop farmers, exports account for nearly half of the cash returns. We export about 60% of the wheat, rice, and soybeans that we raise. All in all, 1/3 of all harvested crops in this country are shipped abroad. 1/3 of the acres go to other countries. A total annual volume of nearly $45 billion. This makes exports important to agriculture. It makes exports important to our entire nation. Those who say we're buying oil with wheat are not far from the truth. And it's true. Oil's too expensive and wheat's too cheap. But in short, this export provides a clear challenge, and the export opportunities a clear opportunity as we move through the 80s. Now, to meet this challenge, the administration has made the expansion of exports the number one priority of U.S. agriculture. At USDA, our policy is to expand exports by encouraging increased participation by the private sector and by decreasing government interference in the marketplace. The administration's views on market access are clear. We're opposed to protectionism, favor freedom of trade. Many foreign markets are difficult to deal with. We must work hard to get into some countries. And once we're in, we must work hard to stay there. Earlier this month, I visited the Far East to encourage expansion of our exports and our markets in such areas as Korea, China, and Japan. And I encouraged a liberalization of their trade policies, especially in Japan, where we need to import more beef And the people would like to have the beef, let me tell you, because it's expensive in Japan. And in China, we opened up a new bakery that the Wheat Association had helped work with the Chinese in putting together. And I'm used to eating donuts. I like donuts. And they were making donuts that day. And I've been to, there's a donut shop on every corner in most of the Midwest, but in Washington, D.C., I can hardly find a donut. I had to go to Beijing, China to get my donuts. And they're just as good as they are at the corner donut shop in Knoxville, Illinois. And probably Manhattan, Kansas, too. I also visited European Community earlier this year and expressed opposition to some of their protectionist trends. I assured the community, their ministers, that the United States would respond aggressively to the unfair use of taxes and subsidies as trade restraints. There's a growing problem in the EC. The European visit produced some successes. First, the community reaffirmed its commitment to the 10,000-ton beef quota, so we can sell that beef over there. Secondly, they recently announced that they were not going to move forward on the internal taxes on vegetable oils, which was a threat. We're going to work for more successes in the future. We are not going to relax. We are reestablishing the image of U.S. strength in trade policy. The Department has also stepped up its activities in trade promotion. The President's budget includes an additional $300 million in export credit guarantees in fiscal 81. That brings the total guarantees to $2.3 billion. And we're looking toward greater increases in 82. Another important development is our export expansion program through our food assistance programs. The United States has carried a bilateral food aid program since 1954. It was then that our Congress enacted Public Law 480 under the leadership of President Eisenhower. And since then, the United States has contributed almost $40 billion in food aid to nations in need. And keep in mind that the PL 480 programs have played a very important role in building new markets for American exports. As a prime example, Korea was a heavy user of PL 480 funds for several years. It's graduated now. It's an important cash customer to us. The question may arise as to whether there is a great demand, a great enough demand, to justify our export expansion plans. Is this the answer for us? The answer is yes. There will be a market. We see a continuing increase in world demand for food, feed, and fiber. In fact, we expect the demand for products in the 80s to be 25 to 50% greater than in the 70s. Developing countries and the USSR seem most likely to use larger supplies of food from the United States and other suppliers. Now, this is especially important as we look towards the Soviet Union. We know they have not built up their reserves, and I think they will be importing near their maximum amount, which could be 45 million metric tons. We've come a long way in reestablishing trade relations since President Reagan ended the grain embargo this past April. The embargo put us in a no-win situation. During the course of the embargo, total Soviet imports from all sources were at their maximum, the highest ever, yet their imports from the United States reached the lowest level since '77. We've not yet fully recovered from the damaging effects on farm prices. We're living with it, the aftermath today, and we're going to live with it for some while in the future. The embargo is behind us, in fact. We must set our vision on the future. The first big step came when we successfully negotiated a one-year extension of the 5-year trade agreement. Another important step was our consultations with the Soviets at the end of September. At that time, we offered the Soviets up to 15 million additional tons without further consultations. That's 15 million above the 8 million tons already assured in the 6th year of the agreement. What's more important is the Soviets have purchased nearly 9 million tons already during the 6th year of the agreement. And I think they're going to take most of what we've offered. I don't know for sure, which is especially encouraging. In the last 2 weeks, they've come in and bought 500,000 tons of soybeans. The first soybeans that they had bought from us since January 4th, 1980, when the embargo was imposed. It just takes time to get this turned around, but we're making rapid progress. There's every indication that this year the Soviet Union will buy more from us than they have ever bought in any other year. And that's some kind of turnaround in 9 short months since this administration took office. Let me change gears and talk to you briefly about some domestic actions we're taking to clear the road for agriculture. Let's talk about research. As a farmer and a former director of agriculture in Illinois, and now as Secretary of Agriculture, I've been impressed with the role played by Kansas State in agricultural research. Your international grains program in the processing, handling, and storing of grains has helped train thousands from abroad. We talked about it this morning as we drove around, President and I. Your Food and Feed Grain Institute has expanded the technical know-how of American agriculture so it's available to other nations. Should be applauded for these efforts. They pay dividends, let me tell you, a better understanding between our countries, and they even help to sell crops. I've always been a firm believer in research. I've played a vital role in helping American farmers achieve a competitive position. Research has played a vital role in helping American farmers achieve a competitive position in world agricultural trade. Not in the area of research, but I think it's of interest, and it's not part of the university precisely, but it works closely with it, and that's your American Baking Institute. I told you I went to that bread bakery and donut bakery in China. Well, the man that's doing the baking is Chinese and from China, but he's been to this American Baking Institute right here in Kansas. That's why he knew how to make donuts. I'm convinced of that. As a Secretary of Agriculture, I pledge to support and maintain the research efforts within USDA. This means that we must support the efforts of research across the board. Production research, because we're going to have enormous demands placed upon us during the decade of the 80s. Utilization research. Let's find new uses so this great agricultural industry can make an even greater contribution to society. But let's save our soils at the same time. That's another important area, conservation. Just this past Wednesday, I introduced a comprehensive soil conservation program to Congress. It's a program that will both encourage and strengthen the leadership of local and state governments and get the grassroots people involved in this process. The plan calls for targeting a greater share of USDA program funds and personnel to the more critical problems in the country. It also would provide federal matching block grants to states for conservation efforts. I want to emphasize that many of our nation's farmers are already changing their farming practices in an attempt to conserve our valuable topsoil. They're moving pretty fast if you just look at it. This thing has come upon us fast. When I was a boy, I never would have believed that we'd be planting more acres of soybeans than corn in the United States. Could you believe that? You couldn't believe it. But 2 years ago we did. And soybeans are an erosive crop compared to corn. So we need some new techniques, and farmers are moving in this direction. And our conservation plan is to help them move there, provide incentive, and provide education. I think farmers are fully aware of the consequences of erosion. When you go across that field and you find a ditch there, you know what happened, and it concerns you and it worries you. And you're looking for ideas and solutions. It costs some money to control this. Part of our plan is to evaluate tax incentives. I don't know if it'll work. Probably don't have the money to afford it. The most important part of our plan, however, is to enlist the help and support of all concerned, states, counties, the extension service, the land-grant colleges, our experiment stations, all bodies of USDA, ASCS, Farmers Home Administration. We need to work together and address our own problems. That's the way we intend to do it, working closely with the states. I've given you some idea of how I see government clearing a path for agriculture to move forward during the 80s and beyond. Now there's a final thought that I'd like to leave with you today. Final thought is this. We've embarked on a course and a crusade in Washington, the likes of which the nation has not seen in this century. We have a president dedicated to decreasing the size of government, reducing our taxes, curbing oppressive regulations. He needs help. He needs your help. Don't underestimate, not for a minute, what you can do. What the combined will of the American people can achieve. The people made their views known loudly and clearly in the case of budget reforms and tax cuts. It worked then. It can and will work again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We have about 5 to 7 minutes for a few questions. There are microphones, I believe, on your right and your left. Is there a question?